you have to be very clear on that first. What's your number? What's your surviving number and your thriving number? And for most agents, they can meet that goal with 12, 24 transactions a year, which is very doable with kids. Very doable. You can do that while they're in school.
Welcome to the Coffee and Questions podcast. I am your host, Michelle Berman-Michael, and my mission with this podcast is simple: to help realtors and loan officers across the world tap into the value Instagram can have for them and their business. To me, organic business that comes to us is the name of the game. On this show, you're going to hear from myself, other experts across social media, and also others that are just like you, selling real estate and doing loans and doing it at a high level on social media. Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee and Questions podcast. This is a very, very special episode. Today, the day we are recording this, marks 1 year of my podcast being live, which there's no better person to share this 1 year with me than this incredible woman. If you guys have not heard of Jessica Hensley, she is the founder of Real Estate Mega Moms, which is the world's largest Facebook group for real estate moms. So Jessica, I am so excited to have you here. Please let my audience know just a little bit more about your awesomeness, and then we'll dive right in.
You are so sweet. I'm like, who are you talking about exactly? Because sometimes it's surreal. But yeah, like you said, I'm Jessica Hensley. I started in real estate back in 2003. So I've been licensed. This year will be 20 years.
Wow.
I was licensed at 18. And I actually have this story of being a very mediocre, average, not what anyone would call a successful agent for the first 11 years of my career. And if you know anything about that timeline, 2007, 2008, the market crashed. And so, it was a really rough first start of my career. And I made a few detours along the way, but I started a real estate company because I had all this track record of success, right? I'm like, let's start a brokerage. And I started a brokerage in 2015. And then from that moment on, became the number one agent in my market. And a mutual friend of ours, Grant Wise, was part of that. So in 2015, when I started my brokerage, I was researching ways to generate more leads. And he came up and taught me how to run Facebook ads. That was a big contributing factor to being the top agent. And I've been able to maintain that level ever since. So I guess for the last 8 years, been number one agent in my market.
That is so incredible. Grant is amazing for a bazillion reasons. And people, you guys can go listen to an episode I did with Grant on this very podcast about Facebook ads if you need some of that. But he's really been influential, clearly, to both of our careers. So it's really cool to have that common thread. I just feel like it's really important to start this episode by talking about the fact that we're both moms, right? Running really successful businesses. And I think that something that not a lot of people talk about is the balance of those two things, which for me has not been easy, especially living where I live. I know for you from our conversations, it hasn't been easy either. And understanding the balance of being a mom and being present and wanting to lead a very successful team comes with an array of challenges that I think a lot of people don't talk about. So can you just tell us a little bit about your experience with trying to grow your brokerage and a lot of the amazing things that you were trying to do in conjunction with eventually starting Real Estate Mega Moms and being a mom and a wife and a friend and all of the things at the same time?
Yes. So me and my husband, we actually struggled with infertility for the first 7 years of our marriage. And I wanted to have kids right away. Like we both wanted 4 kids, we thought that that was what was in God's plan for us. But that wasn't. And so we had our son. He's 10 now. So we have one child, one son. His name is Henry. And so he was born in 2012. So you can do the math. I started my brokerage when he was about 2.5, 3 years old and became the number one agent. And when I looked back at the end of the year in 2015 and I realized what we had accomplished and how many transactions we did and where I was ranking in the MLS, and then I realized, and I did that being gone for 3 months, basically working out of a hotel room and not showing houses during those times. We came home on the weekends and I got to catch up on a Saturday, Sunday. It was a whirlwind. But during that time, I was looking for a community of other moms. And most of the coaches that I could find were men. They were very much about hustle culture, about, just get the next deal. And I'll admit, I was pretty much caught up in that during that time. I'm sure if I had to clock myself, I was working 50, 60 hours a week. And I knew that that wasn't sustainable long term because I didn't want to miss anything. I
Mhm.
didn't want to send Henry to daycare. I did my best until he went into school. He went to somebody's house that I knew 1 to 2 days a week. And I just took him everywhere I went. I mean, he was my little assistant. So in 2016, her grants help, we outlined, who do I want to help? And what came to light was I loved selling real estate, but I also wanted to help other moms that were in the same boat as me. They were looking for a community. They wanted to figure out how to sell more real estate, how to reach their goals, but they didn't want to sacrifice that time with their family. And I was, in my brokerage for 1 year at that point and decided, you know what? If I can do it, they can do it. So let's just go for it. So Real Estate Mega Moms was born. And luckily, the stars aligned and the algorithms aligned, and Facebook wanted to go grow groups at that time. It's today, it's a little bit hard to start a group. And so it just kind of took off like wildfire. I think people could really relate to it. And they were like, finally, there's a group for moms out there that
Mhm.
is, realtor moms. So that's what we teach. Our mission at Real Estate Mega Moms is to show you how to set up your weekly calendar so that you can grow a business without having to sacrifice time with your family. We're all about boundaries. We're all about having a clear start and end time, being very intentional with your time. I find a lot of agents that struggle, they struggle because they don't know how to use their time effectively. They're maybe spread too thin, or they're always chasing after a new shiny object. And so they can't give a system time to work, and they don't get ahead. So those are some of the things we talk about in our group.
There's so many things to unpack in that we could talk about because, well, yes, it's for moms in real estate, right? I think any mom that is trying to do anything business related would get so much value out of that. But one of the things I want to back us up to just a little bit, because this has definitely been an insecurity of mine as a younger mom. I started my company in 2014. I started the Instagram Power Method in 2019, and I had my son in 2021. And there was a lot that went into those 2 years leading up to it. But one of the things for me as a new mom that has been really challenging running a large company is, can I be as present as I want to be and still get as much work done as possible? Because the to-do list never gets shortened. You and I both know that, like, there's always more on the to-do list that needs to get done, and there's never a shortage of ideas of new stuff that we want to add. It becomes this, like, we almost feel like we have to grind because everybody else is grinding. And I think that Mel Robbins said it best on a podcast that I recently heard of hers, where she talks about we have to stop comparing ourselves to other people who are not in the same season of life as us. I mean, my son's 18 months, so 18 months versus Henry being 10, those are very different experiences. And so would you talk to us just a little bit about, obviously you're going to, I assume, meet the moms where they're at, right? Because you're going to have a brand new mom, you're going to have a pregnant mom, you're going to have a mom of teenagers who's finding her career again. How do you walk somebody through that process?
Yeah, so I mean, just like you said, in fact, it says it on our website. The first thing you see is we want to help you find your individualized success. And I saw this saying the other day, and it made me really sit back and think a little bit about what success is. If you follow some larger accounts, larger agents, if you'll really pay attention when they're bragging about their success, a lot of them right now are not bragging about, their Lamborghini or whatever, like these amazing vacations. What they're bragging about is that they get to spend time with their family, how much
Mhm.
time freedom they have, that they can pick up their kids from school and drop them off and be involved. And so I think that if we kind of keep that in mind, that these mega successful agents that are closing 500 deals a year or whatever, they're trying to get to where you're at, to have the time freedom that you have. it kind of changes our perspective a little bit. So why are you working? For how many transactions you want to close in a year? Is it so you can pay your bills? Is it so you can reach a certain goal? You have to be very clear on that first. What's your number? What's your
Mhm.
surviving number and your thriving number? And for most agents, they can meet that goal with 12, 24 transactions a year, which is very doable with kids. Very doable. You can do
Mhm.
that while they're in school, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can rock it and close those 12 to 24. And I think we need to stop, like you said, comparing ourselves to others and feeling like we're always behind. Just do what you need to do and master that and kind of sit in that success. And if your definition of success means that you need to close more, that's fine. There's a way to do that too. And it's going to depend on the season of your life you're in as well. I mean, there's so many factors, but the biggest thing is to just remember that your success doesn't have to look like someone else's.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I have my team laughingly calls it golden hours. My husband works for the military and gets up very early. So we are wide awake between 4 and 4:15 every morning. We come down and I make my husband coffee, I make my coffee, and then I sit on the couch and I work for about 2 hours before my son wakes up. I get so much done in 2 hours before he is even awake. And I truly believe that it's a mom superpower. There's just no way to quantify like how much I can get done there because before him that would never, not that I'm not an early person, I'm naturally an early morning lady anyway. But knowing that I have these two strict hours to be fully present to get my work done, I probably get 6 hours of work done in 2 hours. I mean, easily.
It's
And
kind of like
yeah.
going to go on vacation, right? If you're going to go on vacation, you cram it all into that week before you go. I think
Mhm.
when you're a mom, we kind of have that same mentality of like, how much can I get done?
Yeah, and it's like such a weird laser focus that we just didn't have before. It's like a switch that just gets flipped on after you have a baby. Looking at my day to day, I feel like I get more done now that I do have a son than I ever did prior. What took me 10 to 12 hours a day, I can now do in 4 to 6. And I think that comes down to what you were talking about already, which is knowing exactly what we need to get done, staying laser focused on what actually needs to happen in that day. I'm a big like fan of personal growth reading, and a lot of us do that. High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard is still to this day truly the book that changed my career. He said one thing in the book that I feel like all moms need to hear, which is if you have a list of things that need to get done, pick the one on the list that is probably the hardest for you to do. If you can get through that, it is so much more fulfilling that day than if you just have a list of 12 things and you started at the bottom because it was all the easy stuff, but then that big thing that's kind of looming over you is still sitting on the top of your list. And so now it's an innate every day, right? The first thing on my list that gets done is that one thing that I'm just like, ugh, I just don't want to do it, but I have to do it. And it's just been game changing.
Yeah, I love that book too. That was one of the key books I read in the beginning too.
I love it. Well, talk to me about being a mom and being able to talk about the balance is super easy, right? Because for us, we're like, yeah, I figured out my balance. But when you decided to start Mega Moms, did that balance get interrupted?
Yeah, it did. We actually kind of have came to adopt this philosophy of we don't want a balanced life. And people kind of like, what do you mean? Because if you think about it, balance means equal, right? So I don't want to spend equal parts working and equal parts playing.
Mhm.
I would like it to be imbalanced to my family. However, I know that in the beginning phases and there are different seasons that the balance is going to be shifted to more work than family. It depends, right, on where you're at and what's going on in your family at that time. But also being able to embrace that and understand that if I am working more hours today than I would like, it's to pay off so I can eventually work less hours and spend more time with my family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like everything in life is a pendulum, right? It kind of swings back and forth. For me, working out is a non negotiable. And a lot of moms, especially, I think all of us can agree that working out became secondary to everything when we had a kid. I decided that that wasn't going to be okay for me because I knew that if I could work out, I would be a better mom and I would be more present and I would be a better boss and all of those things. So I think for me, it's working out, but I think everybody has that thing that helps them. It's so odd, but I think every mom has to find that thing that fills their soul back up a little bit. I think it makes us
Yeah.
more present.
Yeah, I mean, a lesson I've learned this last year is just to be a little bit easier on myself and to take care of myself. This is how I am right now, today. I don't want to cause additional stress on my body, so I stopped working out the way I was because I was doing like more CrossFit type stuff and I changed it to yoga. I
Love it.
mean, I feel so good. I'm like, I'm a business owner, my kid's in school. Why am I getting up at 5 to work out? Like I could do it at 8. So I started doing that. I drop him off at school. I go to yoga for an hour. I start my work at 9 because I'm in control of my schedule. And I can't tell you how much of a difference it's made just like in my emotions and my stress level. And anyway,
Let's get real raw, right? Like our marriages, let's be honest,
yeah,
right? You and I are very similar in this case, but I am a get shit doneer type of person. I don't have time for people that make excuses. It's just not my personality. Luckily, I'm married to one of those too, which is great. But he is the opposite of me as far as he's very passive and very quiet. He works enormously hard, like harder than I do, honestly, which is hard to even say out loud. But what has been so challenging is I was making all of these different excuses, right, as to like why I had to work or why I had to do this or why, like whatever it was. And the only thing that I started really feeling was it wasn't that I wasn't present for Knox, it was that I wasn't present for my husband. And it made a world of difference when I slowed down and recognized that because they need us too as moms and as wives, you know?
yeah, I'm gonna say, girl, I'm gonna have to reevaluate my schedule and my priorities after our abundance conference is over. My husband, he's a team roper and he loves for me to go watch him. I hate it because I have to sit there. If you don't know anything about team roping, it's like 5 hours or so, 4 or 5 hours, and they all get numbers and then they go up when their number's called and then they rope. So you're there sitting for 5, 6, sometimes more to see them rope, I don't know, maybe 10 times, but it lasts like 10, 20 seconds, right? So
Wow.
majority of the time you're sitting there waiting. I hate nothing more than wasting time. All of my time is filled with something. There's a purpose. I'm either listening to a podcast, listening to a
Mhm.
book, planning my next adventure, like something. Another thing in this whole kind of self journey of healing is I need to slow myself down again so I can be present for my husband. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I just feel like sometimes it's like real estate mega moms forward slash wives, right? Because I think that
Yeah.
it's both. And I think also a lot of people get into the real estate world because they think that it's this magical place of balance. I love how you define balance because I don't think that anything related to owning your own company or being a real estate agent, which is owning your own company because you are yourself, right? You control your own destiny. There's no such thing as balance. It's a pendulum that swings back and forth. And I think we have to start taking the apologies out, right? We have to stop saying sorry for things. Hey, I can't come to that meeting. You know why? Because I'm actually getting my first facial in 2 years at that time. So you know what? It's going to be next week,
Well,
you know?
it's no one's business why you can't go. Like, I stopped giving people explanations. We are
Mhm.
so inclined to just automatically, I have to prove it or I have to explain myself. No,
Yeah.
I'm not available. Here's when I'm available. And I will say, like, here's how I make sense of it all. I'm not just a downtime kind of person. So, what I like to do is decide what is my non negotiables with my family. That is what goes on my calendar. And if I make those, then I have succeeded that week. So for me, and it's not always been like this, but for this year, my non-negotiable is I want to take Henry to school. Cody was doing it for a while. So I want to take him to school. I want to pick him up on time. He's not going to go to after school care. And he was a couple years ago. And if that's where you're at, no shame on you. I'm just telling you this is where I am right now. My non-negotiable, I want to pick him up. I want to drop him off at school every day and I want to have dinner with them. And I also want to take him to his karate. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, he goes to karate and I'm there watching, right?
Love
So
it.
if I've done those things, then in my book, I've succeeded as a mom. And then right before bed, We always spend about an hour together just hanging out, watching. He likes Westerns, I know. I I live in such a different world, like, I think sometimes than everyone else because I'm married to a cowboy. So I sit there and I watch Westerns with him for
I
about
love
30
that
minutes
so
before we
much.
go.
It's such a
Anyway.
unique world, but I mean, I live in Leesville, Louisiana for the time being. And if you guys have ever been to Leesville, Louisiana, turn around and go the other way. There's really nothing to do here at all, zero. But luckily we live on 2 acres, so there's lots of sticks and leaves and trees and things. But I do want to transition us just to be super respectful of time because I have one really big question for you when it comes to Instagram specifically. Instagram is my lane. Instagram is my eat, breathe, sleep passion, which some people might think that's weird, but that's probably why you're here listening to this podcast because you know that I'm the Instagram person. But Real Estate Mega Moms obviously has a massive Facebook presence. There's no question that that's a place where everyone can go and get connected with you. Why have you spent such a enormous amount of brain energy, if you will, figuring out this social plan? And where does Instagram or where has Instagram fit into all of that for you?
Yeah, so I was a late adapter, I feel, to Instagram. I was very confused. And so I'm really glad I found you, actually, Michelle, because I can't wait for you to put some of your magic on our page. But through very organic growth, we're about 4,500, I think, followers. And we should be so much more. I will say, where I enjoy and feel like we're successful on Instagram is just really showing who we are. If you go to our Instagram feed, you're going to see us and you're going to hear from us and you're really going to feel like you can get to know each and every one of us. Facebook to me has been more about community and getting to know each other. And I think Instagram is almost like become sort of a pseudo website where people can land there, see who you are, and see what you have to offer.
Yeah, it's so true. Brilliantly said, because that's truly what it is, right? Like the Facebook group aspect of things is so powerful. And we have one too, not nearly the largest Facebook group for real estate in the world, but one day. But for us, it's inverse, right? So like our Instagram presence is really, really big and powerful. And then our Facebook group is this kind of smaller community of people who are now kind of dripped into our system. The thing that I love about what you're doing and why this is so important is regardless of whether you have a bigger Facebook group or a bigger Instagram or some combination of the two, the reality of it is if I need you and I decide that you're the person I need to hire, I have to like you. I have to feel connected to you. And then secondly, I have to be able to find you, right? So both of those are really important because if I can't find your cell phone number or if I can't find your social platform and get an email address somewhere easily, I am moving on to somewhere else, like just point blank, right? So having this massive Facebook presence for you, in my opinion, creates this enormous community. Everybody feels very loved, seen, heard. There's a lot of opportunity for these moms to dial into the system. But then also Instagram, as you said, is this opportunity for people to then go slide into the DMs and say, hey, Jessica, I need to hire you. And it creates
Yeah.
this really kind of symbiotic balance that I think needs to
Yeah,
happen.
part of the struggle we've had with real estate mega moms, I mean, this is from the coaching perspective, I guess, but it's been both a blessing and a curse that because the algorithms aligned and it grew so quickly, people joined the community for the community. They did not care who I was. They didn't really even know who I was.
Mm.
So it was so easy for us to get lost in the group because we were just another mom, just like anyone else in the group. We tried to be really intentional about, speaking up, but there's still people in that massive group that really don't even put the two and two together. So I think that where the other presence comes in, the Instagram presence is really where it's not necessarily just about the community, it's about how we can serve our community.
Yeah. And I feel like it's finding relatable pieces. I think it's easy to be like, I'm a mom because there's a lot of us, but there's a lot of other things that we can relate to, right? Or relate to someone with. And so I feel like that's what Instagram really gives us the opportunity to do. Go creep on our stories all day, every day, and follow along with what's going on in our personal life because it allows people to feel connected to us. There's a real estate agent here locally in Leesville, actually. She posts her lunch every single day. And at first, I was like, Alyssa, why are you posting your lunch every day? And then I'm like, now I can't stop watching for whatever your lunch is every single day. And then after a couple of conversations, I then started asking for recipes. And now all of a sudden it's like, you don't realize that it creates this connective piece to somebody that otherwise probably you wouldn't have even known was there if they weren't willing to share that. And so I think Instagram gives us that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really like the missing piece or the rest of the piece of a brand. We tell our moms, don't get obsessed with colors and fonts and logos. Really think about how you're showing up, because how you're making people feel, what they think of when they think of you, that's really your brand. And I believe that Instagram gives you that ability.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go follow my guests on social media. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving us a review wherever you consume this content.